For the baby authors, how many novels should a writer read to learn the trope of a genre? So when you are writing books, it is really imperative to make sure that you are actually studying the genre you're writing in. A lot of us will read books and then decide, oh, I'm going to be an author. And you just work on the knowledge that you already have. It's incredibly important to make sure that you are staying up to date with the trends in the genres as they are currently, not what they were 5 years ago. Dystopian fiction has changed dramatically since The Hunger Games and Divergent. If you think about what dystopia was back in the day, we had Hunger Games, we had Divergent, we had things like the Match series, and we don't see that very much anymore. We see a very distinct change in how chosen one stories are being created these days. So you need to be studying your genres and tropes, and you need to be staying up to date on those things. With that in mind, you need to read as many as possible. I would say no less than probably 20 books in that genre. That's not a hard and fast rule, but you need to understand these things. Now, a really good idea is to actually track the books that you're reading. And when I say track the books you're reading, I mean make a detailed timeline of what's happening in those books. We talk a little bit about this on my channel because a really cool author friend of mine had suggested to me that she uses this process where she has a handful of authors, like a small group, 3-4 people together, who go through and read a whole bunch of books in their genres. They all write in the same space. They sit down and they divvy up the books. You read these 3, you read these 3, you read these 3. 3 is probably an exceptionally low number. It's more like 10 each or something like that. And they go through and they chart everything. So when is the rising and falling action? Where are they implementing the surprise, the twist, or the things inside of the books and inside of the genres? What are commonalities we're seeing in the genre and in this trope? What are the things that have to be there and what are people expecting? Plot these things on a timeline and then look for the averages. What are the commonalities? Where are we seeing the average of the rising and falling actions and the changes inside of this story? Those things can then be implemented as a blueprint to your stories. But at an absolute minimum, I would say 20 to 40 books before you even consider writing in a genre. And that is just the very beginning, like as you're starting to come up with ideas. You should be reading. Now, the one thing that I will say is that as I'm writing books, I am not reading books because I don't want to pull pieces from other people's stories and put them in mine without realizing it. So as I'm writing, if I'm in a writing phase of my life, I am not in a reading phase, period. Goes over there. So I will read when I am not writing, and I'll write when I'm not reading. And that way I have those very clear and distinct lines. But you've got to read as much as possible inside of your genre. And then it's also really helpful to read outside of your genre too, to see what other people are doing in other genres and implement that somewhat into your story as well, just to kind of give it a little bit of an edge or a little bit of something new inside of that genre. So stick to the things people are looking for. And if you really want to do even more research, get on Book Talk and look up your genre hashtags, because they'll tell you loudly and emphatically, they'll tell you what they're looking for in those tropes. And if you provide that to them, you get to make money. And if you don't provide that to them, they will probably roast you. So do your research. Understand what people are looking for, what the expectations are, and what is currently trending inside of the genre and trope that you are writing in right now. And then, if you are having a bit of a pause before you're editing your story, or publishing, or submitting, read more current things and see what you can implement into your story before it goes out, because the best you can write it to market, the better it's going to sell. And every advantage you can give yourself is going to be helpful.